Mike, welcome to the show.
Rick, always a pleasure to chat with you about sports and life.
Well, I want to talk about, you were raised in Chicago, but you got south as fast as you could. You matriculated as a wrestler, collegiate wrestler at LSU. Tell me how that happened.
Well, one of my closest friends, I went to a junior college for 1 year, wasn't really sure where I was going to go. He got a full ride to LSU, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come down there? I think you can walk on." It was that simple. And I went down to Louisiana. I didn't like seafood. I didn't like iced tea. I didn't like rice. And now I got a rice cooker in my house.
Yeah, it was a change agent for you because you never went back north.
No, Mason-Dixon line. I just never got back up there. Went to grad school in Ohio for 1 year, but the people in Louisiana are just phenomenal. They're salt of the earth. They love life. And like I always said, if you can't have fun in New Orleans, you can't have fun.
Well, how did you tell me the process of you becoming involved as the first kind of sports commissioner of the New Orleans Sports Commission? How did that all happen?
Well, yeah, very interesting. So I had started a business with a couple guys that it ended up going south, but regardless of that, I learned a lot along the way. The Final Four, this would have been 86, somewhere around there, whenever we hosted the NCAA Final Four. And there was an article in the paper, a guy by the name of Dr. Merv Trail, who was the chairman of it. And I just literally just gave him a call and said, "Hey, I've got my master's in sports administration. How can I help?" And so I sat on. He said, "Well, come to a meeting." And of course, you got all the Indian chiefs, you got the bankers, the lawyers, the city council members. And he said, "Does anybody need someone to sit on their committee?" And like three people raised their hands. So I sat on like three different committees. And what I found is that, as you know, these big local organizing committees don't always talk to each other. And so they'll go, "Well, I think marketing's going to do that." I go, "No, I'm on the marketing committee. They think you're doing that," And so that kind of raised the attention to Dr. Trail. Fast forward about another year, there's a group called the Young Leadership Council in New Orleans, who are now, the mayors, the city council members, the business leaders today. Back then, there was a couple projects that they did. The one big project was they lit one of the bridges of the Crescent City Connection, the two bridges that go across the Mississippi River, connecting the East Bank to the West Bank. And they said, "Hey, we should try to start a sports commission." Of course, no one knew what a sports commission was. And we did a little research. There was a committee of five of us that pulled it together. And at the time, my business had gone south. So I said, "I'll volunteer to kind of serve as the interim director." And of course, Dr. Merv Trail, the gentleman that I had befriended through the Final Four process, who then asked me to sit on the Republican National Convention on a committee for volunteers, he said, "No need to do an executive search. We already got our guy, and that's you." So that started with a $25,000 loan from one of our board members, and then we hosted the Olympic trials. I bid on the World Cup. We hosted basketball. We hosted just a lot of events, but the Olympic trials in 1992 really put me on the map, and that got the attention of a lot of people. So New Orleans has been great for me and my wife and my family.
Well, why is New Orleans such a great sports town?
Well, I think that the layout of the city, the French Quarter sitting right there, around the bend of the Mississippi, it's walkable to all the hotels. It's walkable to the Superdome and the Smoothie King Center. So it's a great place to come visit, to eat, to take in the entertainment. And the people are always gracious. And by the way, the food's not too bad.
No, people love coming to New Orleans. I've always said the Final Four should make sure it comes once every 4 years because everybody loves being in New Orleans.
They do. And, I think the sports commissions overall have really made it, it's so much more competitive now to host events at all, and because there's a lot of competition. And so that means your cycle of being on the home page of the sports section with Final Four or Super Bowl, it doesn't come. I want to say New Orleans just hosted the Super Bowl. it had been 9 years. But before then, the rotation was about every 4 years that New Orleans was on there. It was really one of the reasons why we started the Sports Commission, because we kind of predicted that more cities are going to do it and we are going to slip in that thing. We needed to fill up the city with other events to do that. And that's why the Sports Commission or other sports commissions have been formed.
Mike, talk a little bit about the process that cities go through to bid on the Super Bowl, the college football playoff, the Final Four, these big events. Talk up a little bit about how that works.
Well, it's a much more arduous process than it was years ago. The original Super Bowls were Paul Tagliabue and a couple guys would come down and they'd, do you have some hotel rooms? Yes, no, maybe. I go back and remember I put on the first NFL Experience, which was nothing more than an elaborate card show underneath some tents on the top of the Superdome deck, So it used to be just a game. Well, now it's become so much more, and the commitment that these cities must provide. You go from World Cup, Olympics, you go to the Super Bowls, Final Fours, the whole March Madness. But as you go down, even going after a AAU 10 and under boys basketball game has become competitive. So these host organizations who own the events are looking for communities that are ready to roll up their sleeves and provide maybe some financial remuneration, maybe it's volunteers, maybe it's some sponsorship access, boots on the ground in helping logistics and getting permits done. But the process can be, again, the bigger the fish, the harder to catch them. And so if you're New Orleans, you might bid 2 other times before you finally get it on the third. Yeah. It's arduous. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and it seems like the Superdome is such a great facility and has recently been renovated, but it seems like the key to getting a big event these days is build a new stadium, build a new dome stadium. And
it's remarkable to look at the Superdome. I mean, it's been there 50 years, and I tell you what, it had great bones to begin with. So they've done multiple renovations throughout the years. ASM Global, they've done a fabulous job of organizing that and coordinating the development and redevelopment of that. The Saints have been a good partner for them, but it starts with venues, no ifs, ands, or buts. And then it's, do you have the community's willingness to participate in hosting it? And that requires a lot of things.
Well, especially New Orleans it's a tourism town. It is a hospitality-driven town, and so there's reasons, to do that.
No question.
This show today is all about New Orleans, and a big part of it is Jazz Fest. And one of the cool things about Jazz Fest is you go in the morning, you're done by 5:00, and that's on purpose.
Correct.
So that then you can go eat in some of the great restaurants and go to some of the great music venues that night and spend even more money than you spent at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Eating 12 poor boys.
It is interesting, at least 12 po' boys. I think the interesting thing is that when we were competing with these other cities, we actually became close friends with a lot of our other cities, whether they're the DMO, the Destination Marketing Organization, or the Sports Commission. So everybody's been friendly adversaries and sharing best practices. There's a large market group in the when we started the National Association of Sports Commissions, which is now called Sports ETA. There's a segment there of all the big cities who continue to help each other be the best they can. And what you find is that every city has got some really great features. Some cities like New Orleans have some natural attributes that have been at the tourism game a lot longer, and tourism means more in New Orleans than it does in a lot of cities. So, but all these sports commissions do a great job in pulling in events.
Well, we're bringing the tall ships back to America in 2026 as part of America's 250th birthday, and we'll start that tour in New Orleans in that bend of the Mississippi River, because New Orleans is a great military town too. I mean, they always have a great Navy Fleet Week, and the Mississippi River lends itself to events along the promenade from Jackson Square down to Mardi Gras World, and we're pretty excited about that. Mike, you left New Orleans. Your next fork in the road was to go open this little theme park in Orlando. Talk a little bit about the start of the Disney ESPN Wide World of Sports complex, why Disney did it, and your
Yeah.
role in that.
Well, early on in the sports tourism trend, Disney had recognized that sports was a growing trend. I think they didn't realize just how big of an opportunity it was. But I was headhunted to come down there and was blessed to work there for almost 20 years as one of the lead executives there. And it was very interesting. Disney did it for a couple of reasons. One, find an incremental niche audience. If you think about it, moms and dads keep their kids attached to Disney, maybe up to like 12 years old, and then they come back later when they're raising kids. Well, from 12 to 18, that's prime target for travel sports. So why wouldn't you find this incremental audience to come to Disney at different times of the year that are probably troughs in the tourism belt at Disney? So it was about driving incremental room nights and incremental theme park tickets to the Walt Disney Resort. And they found that sports was the most incremental of all the audiences there, that people would not, if what you want to do from a marketing standpoint, you understand this, Rick, better than anybody. The cost of acquisition to get someone to buy a product or service is important. You don't have to spend any money if an event is coming to your marketplace, because all the moms and dads are coming because that's where their child is playing. So the sports tourism niche is very, very incremental to every market. And between 9/11 and COVID, everyone really realized sports tourism is the most important niche that they have in their portfolio. And it's getting bigger and bigger every day in every community across the landscape.
And so, when you opened that theme park, it was about so many different sports.
Yeah, it's a great point. Again, what sports do you add? Well, as I said, it starts with venues. So we had to have an indoor field. We had to have outdoor fields. At the time, we only had 4 soccer fields. I think they're up to like 12 soccer fields now. Baseball fields, softball fields, track and field facility, tennis courts. We needed an anchor tenant, so we negotiated to get the Atlanta Braves to sign a 20-year deal. We relocated the Amateur Athletic Union out of Indianapolis. We moved the USSSA out of Virginia to come down there. So what that did, it gave us anchor tenants that allowed us our 365 programming calendar that had those anchors in there. And then we filled it in we ended up doing about 65 Disney created events. We realized we had a great destination. Let's create our own soccer tournament. Let's differentiate it with the characteristics of Disney. And that was a big, big leader for us because we didn't have to pay a rights fee to anybody. We owned it. We owned all the sponsorship. And that turned out to be the best thing. The entire Run Disney series, when I got there, we had a marathon. We quickly added a half marathon. We added a 10K and 5K, and the Run Disney series was born. We then moved it to California. They moved it to Paris. So the Run Disney series has been highly incremental to Walt Disney World. Interesting enough, they put it in January because you could shoot a cannon through the theme parks back in January, and there was no one there. Well, now you can't get a room in that first week of January because of the marathon. So it really proved out to be just a genius move on behalf of the Disney Corporation. But we learned a lot. I guess I want to say I've done at least 65 different sports events, which I would argue most people couldn't even name 65 sports. But we've done them from dog shows to car shows to Pop Warner football to the Atlanta Braves and the NFL.
I'll tell you a funny story. My former business partner, Ron Cook, for years, he represented a bunch of ex-NFL quarterbacks. He had a thing called the NFL Quarterbacks Club, with Johnny Unitas and Bart Starr and Archie Manning. And he had about 38 of those guys. And he did an event down there at Walt Disney World that he wanted to call Football Fantasia. And the guy that
Interesting.
was running corporate alliances at the time, a friend of yours, a guy you knew, Phil Lingell,
Yep.
Phil said to Ron, you can't use that word Fantasia. That's our word. And Ron said, if I find it in the dictionary, can I use it? And he laughs and says, well, you're not going to find it in the dictionary. He opens the dictionary and there it is.
There it
And
is.
so
Yeah.
he got to use the term football Fantasia
Interesting.
as part of his event. That was pretty neat. You know, when you run 65 different sports, you get to meet a lot of people, a
Yeah.
lot of organizing committees. You've now become arguably the leading sports tourism authority, not only in the country, but maybe in the world. You talked about the trade association. You spend a lot of time consulting to a lot of sports commissions. Talk about that at this part of your career and how gratifying that's become.
Well, listen, we're both blessed to have had, fun careers, doing things that we want. People are envious of the jobs we have. I mean, I remember being on planes, and people like, what do you do? I'm like, oh my gosh, here goes the rest of my 2.5 hours, because people always wanted to either talk about sports or they wanted to talk about Disney. I happen to be living in both those seats. But listen, it was always a pleasure. And along the way, you meet just great people who have passion around sport and they have passion around people. What I would say is that, doing all those sports, it gave me probably one of the most unique seats in all of the sports ecosystem. Why does wrestling not do what volleyball does? Why does baseball do what soccer does? Most people that we know in the sports business kind of stay in one vertical. Maybe they're always in major league, maybe they're always in baseball, maybe they're always in football. I was so fortunate to see the great things that were being done at the grassroots level that weren't being done at the pro level. You see sponsorship differentiations, you see different things that are going on. So it just gave me a unique seat. Now, the one thing I think that was probably impacted my life the most is that raising 5 boys, they were all involved in sports. So I was also the client. I was the teen dad. I was the one who booked the reservation. So I kind of knew how that worked. And that really helped me understand grassroots sports in a very big way. My last child graduated from Notre Dame 5 years ago, and yet I'm still on the not-for-profits local foot or soccer club in the marketplace because I still like it. You watch kids at 8 and 9, maybe they make it to 15, but most won't. Playing the sport that they love. But yeah, it's just been. We're just so fortunate to be in our industry.
There's no question about it. In sport, it maybe it doesn't teach character. Maybe it just reveals character. But for young people, it does teach character. It does
Yeah,
teach a lot of
it
things that are,
does. It
I think, are
does.
important.
What I think sports is a great platform by which lessons can be learned. My perspective on that slightly changed. People say sports, can change lives. Sports is a great platform for lives to be changed, but it has to be changed by coaches, by parents, by teammates. It gives you that platform, and so I think we have seen this professionalization of pro sports now infiltrate college athletics in a big way with NIL and the portal, and it seems to always be about money in some way, shape, or form. That's infiltrating its way down into youth sports. We have venture capital people now in the youth sports space buying youth sports clubs, buying youth sports venues. Listen, we're a capitalistic country. I don't begrudge that, but along the way, we're losing that core purpose of why do you play sports? And the fun has caused a lot of kids and parents to pull their kids out of sports because fun is no longer there. It's about winning.
Well, it's interesting. You have another project called Three Dimensional Coaching
Yeah.
that really goes to the heart of that issue of trying to get it back to what it's supposed to be about. Talk a little bit about that
Yeah,
project.
I've been really fortunate to be associated with some great guys. We started a company called 3D Institute on the backs of a book called 3D Coaching by Jeff Duke, a PhD friend of mine who actually ran a sports commission in northern Florida. Um, and it basically says to be the best coach you can be, you must coach in 3 dimensions. you've got to be great at the X's and O's, practice, all that stuff. The next, and by the way, 85% of coaches stop right there. That's all they do. There's another 10%, and this is what the research shows. Shows that how do I motivate Rick? How do I give Rick self-esteem? How do I create team cohesion? Those are the psychological parts of coaching that only another 10% get. Then the last piece is how do I get to Rick's heart? And if I get to Rick's heart, he's going to give me another gear, and he's going to do that because he loves his coach. And the only way he's going to love his coach if the coach loves him back. So this is really about servant leadership in that last dimension. So we have coaching content in the second and third dimension. It's sports agnostic. We've trained coaches all around the world. So we're fortunate to be able to introduce a coaching philosophy and methodology. We're in 5 different states that, to coach in high school, you take our course and you're now certified. So that's growing. We have schools that are taking this on and making sure their coaches, if they want to create a culture of setting those standards, you have to be smart in that architecture. And that's what 3D coaching does.
Before I let you go, I know you're involved in another project right now that's part of the wellness movement.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing there.
Well, in my journeys across doing strategic planning for a lot of these municipalities, I ran across a young lady by the name of Stevie Carr, and Stevie is based in Cincinnati. And I was looking, a gentleman by the name of John Lugbill in Richmond, Virginia, was one of the leading sports commission guys, but Richmond wasn't blessed with all the big facilities that a lot of Martian is. So he really invested in active lifestyles and did just a phenomenal job there for 30 years. And I always admired that. And what I see is that sports commissions, to some degree, have become transactional in that what's the next event, room nights. And sports can have a great impact on a community. And so I connected the dots between sports events, sports competitions, active lifestyle equals wellness. Communities now, and if you look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. with Bobby Kennedy and Maha, it is about looking at a population that is primarily overweight, needs to be healthier. More and more people are getting. So I'm trying to help sports commissions and communities connect the dots, create a 365 presence in their marketplace with a digital marketplace that we've created. It's a company called WellNext, and then put on wellness festivals in certain markets across the country. And we're in dialogue with a lot of my friends in the sports tourism space to make that happen in several markets in the next year.
Yeah, sports can play such a role in a lifetime.
Oh, no question.
Of keeping people healthy. We have an issue. We have a huge, obesity problem in America. We have a huge problem with diabetes and other things. And a lot of it's because we're not physically active.
Correct.
And if we can keep people active from a lifetime, they're going to be in better shape. Well, let's bring it back full circle to New Orleans. What's your favorite New Orleans food and why?
Oh, wow. You didn't set me up for that one. Yeah. Like I said, I was a meat and potatoes Midwest guy. I just didn't realize how bad a cook my mom was, and I get down there and these flavors just take you to life. I love a good gumbo. Interesting enough, I love red beans and rice. It's just, there's something about red beans and rice and a good sausage, good andouille sausage. We've got some real good friends down in Cutoff, Louisiana, or not in Cutoff, but in South Lafourche, Louisiana. And we go down there and they just feed us. That's all they do. And we got something every day, something new, whether we're having a crawfish boil or something else. Todd and Michelle do a great job of feeding us. And next time you come down there, we'll take you down there. You'll never want to leave.
Sounds good. Well, listen, Mike, I can't thank you enough for being with us today on Shaboom.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Keep the good work up.